Hi, my name is Trevor Klee, and this is the GMAT Sentence Correction process. I'm a GMAT tutor, and I scored a 47 verbal on my own GMAT. Also helped a lot of my clients score 40 plus on the verbal section of their GMAT. So I'm pretty good about sentence correction. So I thought I'd share some of my process with you guys. So the main idea of this sentence correction process, and actually of sentence correction in general, is to succinctly and correctly convey the intended meaning of the sentence. Now, this is different from what a lot of people think. A lot of people approach sentence correction either if they're a fluent English speaker, they think, oh, what sounds good? And that doesn't work because, that'll get you so far. You'll be able to do like half or 2/3 of the questions, and then you literally will not be able to improve beyond that because nothing will ever sound better. So you can't just rely on what sounds good in order to get those more difficult sentence correction questions. Now, some other people, non-native English speakers, but also, some native English speakers then say, oh, well, it's a test of grammar, so I just need to memorize my idioms and my verb forms and my this and my that. And no, it's also not a test of grammar or a test of idioms. At least the more difficult ones aren't. So the easier ones, yes, it'll be obvious tests of grammar. And if you memorize your grammar rules, you'll be fine on the easier ones. But on the more difficult ones, it is a test of meaning. Now, the question then becomes, what is the meaning that the author is trying to convey? And then how can I grammatically and correctly convey this meaning? So these more difficult ones are always going to be this question of, how do I convey this meaning? And so that forms the core of the sentence correction process. So let's go and go over the process, and then we'll go through some examples of the process in action. So first step in the process, identify the meaning of the underlined phrase. You can also think about this as asking yourself, why did the author include this exact phrase? I often try to articulate the phrase to myself in order to really get a sense of what is the phrase about? What's the purpose of it? Is it a definition? Is it elaborating on something else? Is it supposed to be the independent clause, the dependent clause? That sort of thing. It also helps me pick on some of the dumb GMAT tricks that they pull sometimes where they use malapropisms. They'll say one word and they'll mean something else. Like one that I saw recently is they say as a return on instead of in return for, which mean two different things. And if you try to use them in a sentence, return on investment versus he gave me this in return for that, you'll realize they're different. But if you don't articulate the phrase to yourself, they probably look pretty identical. So I often articulate the phrase to myself in my first step of the process. Now, in my second step, once I think I know what the meaning is and I understand what the author is trying to say, then I check the grammar. Now, I just check it. It's just quick checks. Check, check, check. So I check verbs, person and tense. This isn't anything crazy, right? He says this, they say that, right? Yesterday, he said this. Tomorrow, he will say that. As a fluent English speaker, you already know these things. You know you're not supposed to say they says, and you know you wouldn't say yesterday, he will say this. So you already know these things. So I check my verbs. I check my pronouns. Pronouns are words that stand in for nouns, right? The boy said that he will do this. The girl said that she will do that. The couple said that they will do this. Again, these are all things you already know as a fluent English speaker. The only thing to be careful of here is they, which in normal English is often plural, right? Like he said, they. I didn't talk to the guy, but he said that they might be here tomorrow, and it's like, is that singular? Is that plural? Unclear. In the GMAT, they is always plural, so that's the only thing to be careful of here. Now, Parallelism is a little more tricky. So that's something that we're actually going to go over another time. Misplaced modifiers are mostly pretty straightforward. Misplaced modifiers, running, the boy while running, trip over a stick, is more correct than the boy tripped over a stick while running, right? Like running needs to clearly apply to boy. So misplaced modifiers is a little tricky. Infinities and participles are another thing that we do need to go over. Independent and dependent clauses are more straightforward. So independent and dependent clauses, every sentence is going to have one independent clause, one dependent clause, or more than one dependent clause. So for instance, the independent clause is whatever can stand on its own sentence. Dependent clause is going to be anything attached to that. So if I say, the boy running tripped over the stick, the boy tripped over the stick is my independent clause, running is dependent. So it can stand on its own. So I know this is quick, and I'm going to go over some of these more tricky grammatical questions in a future video. I just want to point out something right now. So as a fluent English speaker, aka someone who can understand this video, you are going to be good on most stuff that you'll encounter in the GMAT already if you have done zero studying. You are going to be good on identifying verb, person, and tense. You're going to be good on pronouns. You're going to be good on modifiers, and you're going to be good on independent and dependent clauses. These are all things that you will guaranteed be able to do if you can understand what I'm saying right now. So that's why I'm saying we need to focus on the meaning first. The grammar is second, and we're just going to check and make sure, are we okay with the grammar as it is? Just quick checks. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Now, our third step in the process is in the underlined phrase, we're going to check any common sentence construction. Now, the GMAT has a certain way that it likes to construct its sentences. This is a little more complicated, but it's nothing crazy. It's really just, the GMAT really likes their simple active sentence constructions. So, they like using simple verbs. They like using active verbs. They dislike redundancy. They like using that. They dislike an overuse of pronouns, he, she, they, it. Again, we can go over these more in a future video. I just want to point out that this is not something crazy. So for instance, if you had to guess, right, you would be able to tell me that the GMAT prefers a sentence like, he checks the bag versus like the bag was being checked by him. This is simple. It's just the present tense and it's active. The subject's doing it. This is passive, right? The subject has something done to it, and it's more complicated. It's a progressive tense, which is why we have this ing, was being. So that's GMAT sentence construction. And then last in our process, we check our splits. So in terms of how we're going to apply this, so I'm going to give you some examples. But the thing that I want you to think about as I give you these examples is that I want you to ground these in your understanding of how to speak English as you already have. If you have a meaning in mind, then how do you convey it? A lot of the times how you convey it will be the correct way to convey it. So that's why we do the meaning first, and then we're doing our grammar. And sometimes the grammar will trip you up, but a lot of times you'll notice this if you already know what the meaning is. And we're just going to do our quick grammar checks, right? Verbs, pronouns, parallelism, modifiers, infinitives and participles, independent, dependent clauses. Just quick checks. Once you're good at this, it should take you 20 seconds to do this. Then we're going to check our sentence construction in the underlined phrase, which again is like very straightforward. Like we're going to want to use our simple verbs, past, present, future. We're going to want to use our active if possible. We're going to want to avoid redundancy. We're going to want to use that. And we're going to want to avoid an overuse of pronouns. And then finally, we're going to check our splits. So I hope this isn't too overwhelming as I've just explained it. I will be going over more of this stuff in future videos. But for now, I really want to focus on this initial stuff because it is the single biggest mistake that I see people make. The single biggest mistake that I think see people make is they think that, oh, I can just ignore this and I can go straight to this. And that is not something to do. You cannot just ignore the meaning. Like that is by far the most important part of sentence construction. All right, cool. So we're going to go into some examples here. Before I go into examples, I just want to say, so this process is explained in a book I wrote along with a bunch more examples. The book is on my Gumroad page, gumroad.com/Trevor Klee. Also be providing a link in the description, but just giving you a heads up. All right, cool. So these are some actual GMAT ones that I've taken. In my book, I have my own, sort of tricky examples that I came up with. Here are some actual GMAT examples. I want to show you how this process works. So let's read it, and then we're going to do meaning, grammar checks, sentence construction checks, splits. All right, so example 1. This one's a little tricky, but not too bad. So fossils of the arm of the sloth found in Puerto Rico in 1991 and dated at 34 million years old made it the earliest known mammal of the Great Antilles Islands. Okay, cool. So meaning-wise, what's going on here? Well, so we've got fossils of the arm of a sloth found in Puerto Rico in 1991 and dated at 34 million years old made it the earliest known mammal of the Antilles Island. Okay, so let's check a second. So we've got three things going on here. We've got fossils, arm, and sloth. So what exactly was it and what was found? So this is when the meaning comes into play. The fossils were found in Puerto Rico in 1991. The fossils were dated at 34 million years old. The sloth was the earliest known mammal of the Greater Antilles Islands. So we have to ask ourselves, first of all, meaning-wise, is this clearly conveyed that it's the sloth that's the earliest known mammal? And for me, the answer is no right now. If I say fossils of the arm of the sloth, even if I cut out the rest of this, like fossils of the arm of a sloth made it the earliest known mammal of the Greater Antilles Islands, I don't think it really conveys that it's the sloth that's the earliest known mammal. So I'm already sort of suspect of this. Let's see, grammar-wise, how do I feel about this? So this is right, fossils of the arm of sloth found in Puerto Rico in 1991. This says and dated at 34 million years old. This modifier is not particularly clear, right? Because I'm just connecting this with and dated, right? So the question is, and is a conjunction. It's a connecting word. He does this and this. I do that and that. I eat peanut butter and jelly. What am I connecting here? Well, I'm not really sure, right? Is it supposed to be fossils of the arm of a sloth found in Puerto Rico and dated at 34 million years old? I'm not really sure what I'm supposed to be connecting here. So I'm already not really big, on like this and using this modifier, like dated at 34 million years old. Not really big on that. The other thing that I'm already noticing here is dated at 34 million years old I don't love it. At the same time, I'm actually going to check these quickly, and I notice all these say dated at 34 million years old, so I guess I don't have a choice on that. But the and dated, I do have a choice on. So I'm not big on this and. It's not really connecting my modifier clearly to what I want to, which is probably the sloth. The fossils of the sloth were dated at 34 million years old. Okay, cool. So that's my grammar. Sentence construction, not really great, but sort of the same issues I've already covered, that I don't think the meaning is very well conveyed, that it's the sloth that the earliest known mammal, and that the fossils were what was dated. So I think as part of my sentence construction, if I can fix this up, my sentence construction should get better. So now let's go to my splits. A, no. B, fossils of the arm of sloth that they found in Puerto Rico. No, this is even worse, right? Because who is they? This is a pronoun without a referent. Pronoun without an antecedent. There's no one who we're referring to as they. Obviously it's supposed to be like scientists or something, but no. So this is really bad. And then the other thing is has been. Grammar-wise, is has singular or plural? Well, I would say he has been, right? So it must be singular. But that doesn't make sense because it's not the sloth that has been dated, it's the fossils. Fossils have been dated. So this, incorrect. All right. Fossils of the arm of a sloth that was found in Puerto Rico in 1991 was dated at 34 million years old. Again, this is how my meaning connects to my grammar. Was found and was dated would have to refer to the sloth, but we're not trying to refer to the sloth. It's not the sloth that was found, and it's not the sloth that was dated. It's the fossils that were found and the sloths and the fossils that have been dated. So this is why it's important to go for meaning first. So I understand why this is wrong. The grammar comes second. Grammar is very straightforward. Once you understand it's a singular versus plural thing, grammar is very straightforward. But if you don't understand that, you would very easily be tripped up by this one. All right, now let's keep going. Fossils of the arm of a sloth found in Puerto Rico in 1991 have been dated at 34 million years old, making the sloth the earliest known mammal on. Okay, so this is actually pretty good. Fossils have been dated. Found in Puerto Rico is describing sloth. Then it says making the sloth. I'm no longer saying making it. I'm now saying making the sloth the earliest known mammal on the Greatest Antilles Islands. This is pretty good. All right. Last thing. Sloth, which found in Puerto Rico in 1991, was dated at 34 million years old, made the sloth the earliest known mammal of the Greatest Antilles Islands. No, can't be, because this says fossils of the arm of the sloth, which was dated at 34 million years old. So I've got a couple of issues here. The found in Puerto Rico in 1991, no longer clearly referring to sloth or anything. And then the other thing, it's referring to which, because that's next to it. Modifiers have to be next to what they're modifying. That's how English works. And then again, was dated. The fossils were dated, not the sloth. Okay, cool. So when I started with my meaning first, and I understand what was found and what was dated and what was supposed to be the earliest known mammal, the grammar came out of that really easily. If I had tried to start with the grammar first, would have been very confusing. All right, let's go on to, this is a harder one. So this one, we're going to have to be more careful about the meaning. So let's look at this. By skimming along the top of the atmosphere, a proposed new style of aircraft could fly between most points on Earth in under 2 hours, according to its proponents. Now, let's go through the meaning here. Okay, what exactly is skimming along the top of the atmosphere? It's the proposed new style of aircraft. Okay, that's pretty good, right? The proposed new style of aircraft is skimming along the top of the atmosphere. Sure. Now, the proposed new style of aircraft could fly between most points in under 2 hours. That makes sense. And then it says, according to its proponents, and its refers back to the new style of aircraft, which is fine, right? It's singular, going back to new style of aircraft, pretty clear. Its isn't going to refer to anything else. So as it stands, this is actually pretty good. The meaning is clear. The grammar conveys the meaning, and the sentence construction also conveys the meaning. These are all pretty simple. Could fly, yeah, that makes sense because it could fly. It probably doesn't right now because it's just proposed. According to its proponents, yeah, we've set up the independent dependent clause as well. That's a good use of a pronoun. The meaning is clearly conveyed. So this is good. So let's check some of the rest of these. So by skimming along the top of the atmosphere, proponents of a proposed new style of aircraft. This is a misplaced modifier. This is when meaning becomes very important because the proponents are not skimming along the top of the atmosphere. Probably not, unless they can fly themselves. So this is already a misplaced modifier. The rest of it, okay, but that part, not so good. All right, a proposed new style of aircraft could fly between most points on the Earth in under 2 hours, according to its proponents, with it skimming along the top of the atmosphere. Here, we're missing the meaning, right? We want to say by the skimming. That's how it could fly. It's not with it skimming. It's not, oh, by the way, it's also like skimming along top of the atmosphere. It's a cause and effect type relationship. So that's meaning is so important here. It's by skimming, it could fly. So this is incorrect. All right. A proposed new style of aircraft, say its proponents, could fly between most points on Earth in under 2 hours because of it skimming along top of the atmosphere. So this is a little tricky. So here we've got the because of it skimming along the top of the atmosphere. This is when it comes down to sentence construction. So when we get our sentence construction here, now the way the GMAT likes to construct sentences is if we do because, it should be a active verb. So for instance, I would say because it skims. Because it skims along the along the top of the atmosphere. Now, if I want to do skimming by GMAT sentence construction, this should be skimming is how I do a modifier. By skimming along the top of the atmosphere, comma, a proposed new style aircraft. So in order to cross out D, this is when you have to know how the GMAT thinks you should properly convey the meaning of a sentence. And they say, if you want to do a cause and effect, if you want everything just being this because of this, right, then you should just be doing set it up with an active verb, simple active verb. That conveys the meaning better. If you want to do a modifier independent clause by skimming along the top of the atmosphere, then you can use your participle ing. So this is a little trickier. This is when sentence construction becomes important. That use of active verbs in the independent clause. All right. And then last up, according to its proponents, skimming along the top of the atmosphere makes it possible that a proposed new style of aircraft, I mean, this is a mess, right? According to its proponents, skimming along the top of the atmosphere makes it possible. Again, we're getting this like a weird thing where we're putting proponents next to skimming. It's kind of weird. We're saying it, pronoun, meaning-wise, what does it refer to here? There's no antecedent. There's no antecedent to it. There needs to be something clearly that, right? So its proponents clearly refers to aircraft. Makes it possible? What does that refer to? I have no idea. All right. So this is the GMAT sentence construction process in action. I hope you enjoyed these examples. So I started with my meaning first, and then I went into my grammar checks and my sentence construction checks, and then my splits. But I always start with the meaning first. Okay. In future videos, I'm going to be talking more about the grammar and some of these trickier grammar stuff that you might be a little unfamiliar with. It's nothing crazy. You still speak English, so if you can understand what I'm saying, you don't have to worry too much, but it does require a bit of review. All right, but that's it for this video. If you want to check out my sentence correction guide, it's on gumroad.com/Trevor Klee. And then my tutoring website is trevorkleetutor.com. And then like and subscribe to get more sentence correction videos. All right. Thanks so much. Stay tuned.